Gurren Lagann is one of my favorite shows of all time. Though I appreciate it now more than I did while watching it, there is one aspect of the show that has always deeply resonated with me. The first episode. When I first experienced the show back in 2014, I couldn't understand what it was about this introduction that connected with me so strongly. Little did I know that Gurren Lagann's first episode would wind up being quite possibly my favorite first episode in anything ever. So, since I made a video discussing how terrible Fuuka's first episode is about a month ago, I decided to balance out the scales by breaking down what exactly makes Gurren Lagann's opening installment so incredible. Skipping past the flash forward that kicks off the show, we open with a group of people digging tunnels. This, and the narration that comes with it, establishes the restricted, monotonous feeling of life beneath the surface. After Simone finds a small keepsake buried in the dirt, he bursts out of his tunnel and scurries off. The village chief exclaims, "Why can't you dig like him?" hinting at Simone's reputation as a teacher's pet of sorts who plays by the rules. That detail will come up again later on when he's juxtaposed against the outlandish icon that everyone knows and loves. This opening scene also clues us into Simone's tunnel vision. The initial imagery provides a very focused view of what's going on, but that intense focus could also be viewed as narrow-mindedness. Simone doesn't live an expansive life, nor does he pursue any grandiose goals. He does the same thing day after day, and the staff at Gainax did an incredible job bringing that attitude to the forefront of this scene. This idea will be repeatedly challenged as the series progresses, so it is essential to lay that groundwork from the outset. From this scene of a group of girls mocking him, we can tell that Simone is definitely not popular, nor is he self-confident, as he trudges onward with his head down. Because he isn't paying attention, Simone bumps into Kamina, who doesn't even fit in the frame. Cut to Simone's reaction, then to Simone looking up to Kamina, until we finally get a look at Kamina's face. This slow build-up before we can even get a look at Kamina establishes his imposing figure and importance to the narrative. As if that wasn't enough, Kamina's very first line of dialogue is, "Walk with your head held high, Simone." This quickly sets up the inspirational leadership and kindness that is the core of his character. We'll learn later on that unorthodox doesn't even begin to describe Kamina's methods, but his violent tendencies are fueled by a legitimate concern for his comrades. I'd like to point out how Simone and Kamina address each other by name here. It's obvious that these two know each other, but their widely different personas make it hard to imagine that these two would consistently cross paths. This is purely conjecture, but I'd imagine that, if Kamina's antics landed him in hot water in the past, Simone would be hidden in the crowd of people watching it all play out, in a similar fashion to how Izuku witnesses the battle in episode 1 of My Hero Academia. In any case, the dialogue here feels natural simply because of how charismatic Kamina is. It's essentially a one-sided conversation, but the dynamics of this interaction are critical in laying the groundwork for their relationship. The next scene consists mostly of shenanigans, but it too is packed with both obvious and subtle meaning. Kamina declares that Simone's drill is the drill that will pierce the heavens. But when Simone asks for a reason, Kamina shoots him down. From this, we can gather that Kamina is an extremely passionate and optimistic guy with high expectations for Simone. By shrugging off Simone's question, however, it's also implied that his thoughts and actions are dictated by emotion instead of reason. This is a critical part of his character that would land him in hot water down the road. The gang attempts to break through to the surface, but the village chief cuts them down and declares that there is no surface. Each shot of Kamina during this interaction is warped in such a way that exudes a feeling of being trapped. Take this shot of him at the bottom of the frame, beneath the many layers of Geha village, for example. When the chief gets in Kamina's face, the perspective is tilted in such a way that places the chief on top, giving him the power in this frame. Notice how Simone is just barely included in this angle as well, placing him even further below his bro. Kamina's companions abandon him when the chief threatens to not feed them that night, but when the chief tells Simone to get back to work, Simone hesitates. Kamina's respect for loyalty plays a big role in this scene as well. He promptly rejects the other three for selling him out, but before Simone can even respond to the chief, Kamina tells him not to sweat it. We find out later on that these two actually had met before. This isn't the first time that Kamina had tried to reach the surface, but even when that plan seemed to be failing as well, Simone never quit. This not only explains why Kamina had so adamantly roped Simone into his plan, but it also provides a greater understanding of this brief sentence. We, as the audience, can already see a bond forming between these two, but in reality, that bond had already been shaped well before the series began. Speaking of beginnings, when the earthquake hits, the chief loses his power in the scene. Before, he towered over Kamina at the top of the frame, but now, we see him taking a step back. Kamina, on the other hand, commands the center of the frame, unfazed. He doesn't even bat an eye to the threat of the quake, and in this shot, we now see Kamina towering over the frame. "I don't run from anything," he says. Then, in just a few short seconds, Simone's entire backstory is explained. We get some proper explanation on this later, but the brief images we see add a tremendous weight to his position in this scene. His cries to run away gain a legitimate pathos behind them. Both of Simone's parents were killed during a previous earthquake, so while everyone else's fear of death is logical, I'd argue that Simone's is much stronger and more traumatic given the fact that his family had actually been crushed. In the next shot, Kamina's focus shifts to Simone when he recalls Simone's past. Instead of taking Simone's advice and backing down though, Kamina simply comforts Simone. This action shows that, while he truly does care about Simone, Kamina isn't willing to let his friend's shortcomings slow him down. Kamina doesn't conform to the rest of the world conforms to him. The next scene consists of Simone's internal monologue about how the ceiling will one day fall and kill everyone in Geha village, and how that's just a fact of life. Then, Simone finds this awesome, humongous face that he rushes to tell Kamina about. Kamina muses about how that would be a jailbreak before he nonchalantly breaks jail. This serves to further emphasize Kamina's power, as it seems like the chief can only control Kamina when he decides to play along. He comments on how there will be hell to pay if the chief finds out, but it's obvious by this point that the implication is more of a formality than anything else. Sure enough, the chief finds out, but his control over the frame is short-lived as the ceiling collapses and a massive monster bursts into Geha village. Now it's Kamina who commands the frame as the chief cowers in fear. Simone again tries to convince Kamina to run away, but there isn't any personal weight behind his concern this time, so Kamina ignores him and boldly confronts the monster. While the three peons we saw earlier criticize him for being an idiot, a dunce, and a dumbass, Simone's fear disappears, and his eyes shine with awe. Then the single most attractive female character in any show ever bursts into the scene firing a laser rifle. I love how, despite how tense this scene is for basically everyone else, Kamina runs up to Yoko and starts flirting with her almost immediately. At least someone has their priorities in order. Saying that Yoko isn't overly sexualized is a ridiculously false claim. Her attire shows a lot of skin, and the majority of the cast idolizes her good looks. Hell, both of the two main characters have already shown that they're attracted to her. The reason why I don't object to this, however, is because Yoko is more than just an object. Sexuality is ingrained in her character, but she's a person who has goals and emotions nonetheless. Other shows will focus solely on that aspect as if it's the only facet of that character, but Yoko's sex appeal is just that, a facet of her overall character. It's impossible to ignore it, but that's how physical appearances work. Simone and Kamina can check her out, but they can also have genuine conversations with her that don't revolve around sex. Just look at this shot. Even when Kamina is openly checking her out and commenting on how nice of a body she has, he and the camera focus first on her rifle. Simone digs a tunnel, and the three make their way back to the face that Simone dug up earlier. Before they can get there though, Yoko finds a perfect shot that will take out what we now know is a gunman in one blow. Kamina ruins it by giving away their location though. "A man looks his opponent in the eye when he lets him have it," he says. This is a concrete example that Kamina isn't perfect, and it foreshadows the potential danger that comes attached to his pride. The three find Simone's face and discover that it can be piloted. Simone immediately tries to pass it off to Kamina, but Kamina refuses. "I can't do this," Simone says, to which Kamina replies, "Dumbass? Reject common sense to make the impossible possible." When that doesn't convince Simone, Kamina comes up with this. This helps Simone muster the courage to start the thing, but he doesn't have enough in him to actually start fighting until he echoes Kamina's words himself and charges in for a save. What I find so interesting about Simone is how he plunges into battle in spite of his fear. Kamina can do it because he doesn't fear anything, but Simone is terrified during all of this. Eventually, with Kamina's support, Simone obliterates the gunman and pierces through to the heavens. What follows might just be my favorite image in all of anime. The dust and rubble clears, and as Lagaan's canopy opens, the rush of air sends Simone's cloak flying over his face. He gasps, and his eyes burst open into this beautiful view of the face of the planet. The setting sun and rising moon paint a lovely contrast of the night and day experience that only life on the surface can provide. While Geha village was flooded by a glaring, pale blue light that reminds me of the soul-sucking lights you'd find in a school classroom, these lights are just bursting with bright, warm colors. Yoko admires the view in the background, while Kamina and Simone take everything in. She has already seen this before. This is her home. Kamina gapes in shock and awe, but he still has enough wherewithal to exclaim, "This is the surface?" Remember that, though he has long since been there, Kamina has visited the surface once before, so this isn't entirely new to him either. If anything, it looks like he's taking in the view and remembering what he had seen before simultaneously. Simone, meanwhile, doesn't say a word. He is completely silenced by the beauty of a world that he never knew existed. The combination of the gorgeous scenery, vibrant colors, and the context of the narrative creates an iconic moment that I have yet to see topped. After another warm, sweeping shot of the landscape, Simone exclaims, "It's so beautiful," and I wholeheartedly agree. This is only the beginning, though. So Yoko has to cut in and introduce herself to keep the story moving. The forces of gravity haven't stopped either, so the three crash into the ground. There's this interesting subversion when it looks like Yoko is about to pull a tsundere after Simone lands on her chest. But instead, she pulls Simone back into her boobs to reveal two menacing gunmen. Cue the credits, and my god, I've already filled 4 pages with this script. This episode is fantastic. 3 major characters and their respective personas are introduced, a strong bond between Kamina and Simone is cemented, and Simone even undergoes a mini character arc. The imagery from the dark, suppressive Geha village to the warm vibrance in the first shot of the surface is effective at establishing the show's range of themes and tone. We've even gotten a taste of Gurren Lagann's massive upscaling by already reaching the surface. Everything about this episode lays the groundwork for the badass, yet emotional journey that follows. I cannot give it enough praise. If somehow you haven't already seen Gurren Lagann, it's available for legal streaming on Netflix and Crunchyroll, if you have access to either of those platforms. And if you want to hear more insightful analysis about it, Best Guy Ever has already made the best video ever on the subject that I also recommend you check out. If you want to believe in the me that believes in you, be sure to share this video around and follow me on Twitter at MathWiz97x. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on YouTubing.